Hi, this is Daniel Stevens, formerly known as Adanya Stevens. This is Quiet Sounds Convos, a YouTube channel I'm trying to build where I talk about being an indie artist, music, jazz, creative writing, and all things artistic and DIY. So, today I'm here to talk to you about Lil Hardin. I started researching her because my professor at Oberlin assigned me to research her. I'm a composition major. I'm actually a double degree composition and creative writing, and my teacher assigns me to research different composers, and we're starting with like the very early jazz composers. So I did started with W.C. Handy, then I did Jelly Roll, and then the third was Lil Hardin. And I was excited to find out he was having me research woman. I had no prior knowledge of her. I had heard of the first two he assigned me, but I've never heard of Lil Hardin. But she happens to be Louis Armstrong's wife. And so I was like, okay, cool. And I started reading the book. The book I picked up is a biography of Lil Hardin called Just for the Thrill. Let me see, I'm going to get it real quick. So yeah, here we are. Just for a Thrill. And I don't fully understand why it's called that yet. I'm not done with it, but I'm halfway through, and I've had quite a few comments because some things were just really concerning, as have been in many other biographies, especially W.C. Handy and Jelly Roll. But this had less to do with racism and more to do with sexism. And so I thought Louis Armstrong was just a self-made artist. I didn't really understand how much he was helped with his career. But from reading this book, I kind of learned about how his wife set up most of the opportunities that made him successful, but seemed to get very little to no credit for it, because I've never heard of her, but Louis Armstrong is like famous. And so far from what I've read, and I encourage you to read this book if you're interested in the topic, Louis was first playing with King Joe Oliver's band, and Joe Oliver only let him play second. He never let him play lead for like a long time. And Lil Hardin was the person who encouraged him to leave the band and go play lead somewhere else. I have a list here of things she did. She also led and put together bands and recordings that he played in. So most of the records that he recorded, Lil Hardin put together the recordings. She worked with the record company to arrange the recordings. She led the band. She worked with the rehearsals. She even taught him all of the parts that went with the songs, and she wrote a lot of the songs, like the very famous Struttin' with Some Barbecue, which I've always thought was by Louis Armstrong, and he even claimed credit for it and made up a story about how or why, what inspired him to write it. But really, she's the one who wrote it, and his story may have inspired her to name it Struttin' with Some Barbecue, but he didn't actually write it. Also in this biography, I've been learning that every time Louis Armstrong was unemployed or struggling with his life and his career, she always found him a new job. She's like one step ahead. He would be he was kind of a clueless man. He kind of seemed very like childlike in the sense that he kind of just followed what felt good and where the wind blew, but not really like methodically thought about his career. And a lot of times when a gig was getting dangerous because the club he was working at was associated with mob violence, or he was only playing second trumpet, or he wasn't making as much money, she always had a better gig for him, and she was like always looking out for him and finding him better jobs. Almost every job he got after they met was set up by her. Don't quote me on everything here, because I haven't done any like serious research. These are just my comments from kind of like casually reading this biography. But I encourage you to go research and read the book for yourself. Let's see what else. Also, the really sad thing is, even though she helped him so much with so many different things in his life, he cheated on her for years, and she knew. He cheated on her blatantly. He kept in contact with his ex-wife. He started dating a 19-year-old he met at a club that he played at, and continued a relationship with that 19-year-old for months or years. I don't remember which. I'm kind of like in the middle of the book. And Lil still played with him, still hired him, or, put him on for gigs, still organized recordings for him, and still loved him, and still was trying to reconcile their marriage. It's like she never gave up. She always loved him, but she didn't let her pain get in the way of her career, because she still always was setting up gigs. She went back to school to get a master's degree. She was always learning and composing, and she was like very resilient. But it's also very sad how loyal she was to him, even though he wasn't really treating her well. But I guess she saw the bigger picture of like what he was meant to do for the music world. But it kind of just made me sad, and made me think about some situations I've been in the past, where I've been dating a guy I'm playing with, which I've been advised not to do. But it's one of those things that happens sometimes if you're a musician and you connect with someone musically, and you also are attracted to each other, especially since it's not typical for female musicians or femme presenting people to play. So it's like not really thought about the idea of people dating as much, but it happens. Sometimes it's not that easy to prevent or to follow like a rule, which I believe that's what happened with those two and many other jazz power couples. Well, they were considered the first power couple, but I don't really know if that's the right way to define them, because obviously the dynamics weren't very balanced. But I was in a situationship with someone that I played with, and I was the leader of the band. I put together a lot of the music. I composed a lot of the music, and I set up almost all of the gigs. And I still don't feel like I was treated very well for what I contributed. And I feel like it has something to do with, the fact that most of jazz is played by men. And when a woman steps up and is really leading something, it's easier for men to not take her seriously. And so, or give her the recognition that she deserves. So I think that's what happened with Lil Hardin for sure. I'm sure it happened with many other women in jazz. And I think it still happens today. And I'm starting to just now open my eyes to it, because this is the first time I've really researched something in depth. But I think it's really tragic, and I think it's really important that we go back and learn about and recognize the women in jazz that did really important things and get the whole story, because I'm sure she's not the only jazz wife that had a huge impact on her more famous husband's life. And I'm sure she's not the only woman in jazz who has not gotten the amount of recognition she deserves. But yeah, I hope you guys check out this book just for a thrill, or do some sort of research and just maybe a online biography. It's by James L. Dickerson. So that's all. That's my soapbox for today. Maybe I'll do a part 2 once I finish it, if I have anything else to say.